The smell hit me first. Charcoal smoke mixed with something cheaper, lighter fluid, the kind my brother-in-law always bought in bulk from Costco because he thought it made him look like a man who knew how to do things. It was the 4th of July, 92 degrees, and my sister's backyard in Knoxville was already packed by the time I pulled up in my government-issued sedan. I almost didn't come. I told myself every year for the past 3 years that I didn't have to do this anymore, that I was 31 years old. I had my own life, my own apartment in Virginia, and I didn't owe anyone a 6-hour drive down I-81 just to stand in a yard and be reminded of everything they thought I wasn't. But my grandmother had called me herself. Not a text. An actual phone call, her voice thin and a little uncertain the way it had gotten since her hip surgery, asking if I was coming. I came. My name is Wren Cole. And that summer afternoon was the last time I would ever walk into that yard as the person they thought I was. There were maybe 30 people there by the time I arrived. Cousins I half recognized, neighbors I didn't know at all, a few of my brother-in-law's work friends who had claimed the good chairs near the cooler like they'd been there since morning. My sister, Jess, was at the grill with her husband, and she waved at me with a spatula when she saw me come through the gate. The wave you give someone you're glad showed up, but not glad enough to actually walk over. My mother found me first. She had that look she always got at family gatherings, bright-eyed and slightly performative, like she was hosting a show about what a normal, happy family looked like and needed me to stay in character. "You look thin," she said, hugging me. "Are you eating?" "I'm fine, Mom." "Your hair is shorter." "It is." She studied me for a second the way she always did, like she was searching for something that would explain me to her. She never found it. Eventually, she squeezed my arm and went back to whatever conversation I'd interrupted, and I went to find my grandmother. She was sitting in the shade near the back fence, in a lawn chair someone had positioned specifically so she'd be out of the sun. She was 81 years old, and she still had the posture of a woman who'd never once been apologized to and never expected she should be. When she saw me, she held out both hands, and I crossed the yard and took them, and she looked at my face for a long moment before she said anything. "You look tired," she said. Not like my mother said it. She said it the way you say something true. "Little bit," I admitted. "Sit with me for a while." So I did. I sat with her in the shade while the party moved around us, and she told me about her neighbor's new dog and the book she'd been reading, and how the physical therapist they'd sent to the house after her surgery was the most humorless man she had ever met in her life. I laughed, actually laughed, and for about 40 minutes I forgot why I'd almost stayed home. Then my brother-in-law's younger brother arrived. His name was Cole, same as my last name, which my mother always thought was funny when Jess started dating him. Some kind of cosmic joke. And he was 24 years old and had been in the Marines for about 18 months, which as far as he was concerned had permanently elevated him to a category of human being the rest of us could not fully access. He came through the gate with 2 of his friends and a case of beer, and the energy in the yard shifted in that specific way it does when someone arrives who believes the party wasn't really started without them. I'd met Cole twice before. Both times he'd done that thing where he asked what I did for work, waited about 4 seconds for my answer, and then turned the conversation to himself. I worked federal. I'd told him that, vaguely, and he'd nodded like it confirmed something he already suspected about me. Desk job, paper pusher, someone who needed the government to sign her paychecks because she couldn't cut it anywhere real. He cracked a beer before he even said hello to anyone and made his way to the grill to slap my brother-in-law on the back. And I watched him from across the yard with the particular stillness I'd learned to maintain in situations where I needed to read a room without the room knowing I was reading it. My grandmother touched my hand. "Don't let him ruin your afternoon," she said. I smiled. "He won't." For a while it was fine. The food came out. People filled plates. The little kids ran through the sprinkler someone had set up near the side of the house. My 8-year-old nephew, Jess's son Benji, was the happiest person there, the way little kids always are at parties, because the party is entirely and completely for them, whether anyone knows it or not. He was chasing another kid with a water gun, shrieking, and every time he ran past me I felt something in my chest loosen a little. Cole drank his way through 4 beers in about an hour and a half. I wasn't counting specifically, but I noticed things. It's not a choice anymore, it's just how I'm wired. I clock exits and entrances, I track who's been where and for how long, I notice when someone's voice gets louder than it should be for the conversation they're having. Cole's voice had been getting louder for about 20 minutes when he walked over to where I was standing near the back fence and said, "So what is it you do again? Some kind of admin thing?" "Federal contractor," I said, which is what I always say. He pointed his beer bottle at me. "Benefits must be good." "They're fine." "My buddy tried to go that route," he said. Said it was basically a waiting room with a salary. You just sit there and wait for your pension. His two friends were nearby. Not quite listening, but not listening either. "Something like that," I said. He laughed. The laugh of someone who's used to laughing and having people join in. One of his friends did. "Nah, I'm just messing with you," he said, and took another sip. "We need people who can handle the paperwork, right? Somebody has to." I looked at him. He looked back, and something in my expression must have registered as a challenge because his jaw shifted slightly. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "Enjoy your beer." I turned back to the yard and he stood there for a moment like he was deciding whether to leave it there. He decided wrong. The thing about Benji is that he trusted everyone in that yard the way kids trust people who are supposed to love them. He'd grown up at these gatherings, and he'd known Cole his whole short life, and so when Cole grabbed him by the back of his shirt during what he called a game, swinging him around, the kind of rough that looks like fun until you see the kid's face, Benji didn't know how to say stop. But I did. I was across the yard before I processed that I'd moved. "Hey." I said it quietly. Not loud. The way you speak when you need someone to hear you specifically and not perform for the crowd. "Put him down." Cole turned around with Benji still in his grip. Benji's feet weren't touching the ground. "We're playing," Cole said. "He's not having fun," I said. "Put him down." Cole looked at his friends. Then he laughed. "You need to relax. This is what boys do." "Cole." My sister had appeared from somewhere behind me. "Come on, put him down. The food's getting cold. I'm not talking to you," I said to her. I kept my eyes on Cole. "I'm talking to him." "Benji, come here." Something in my voice reached my nephew. He went still in Cole's grip, looked at me, and I could see him register that the situation had changed. Cole set him down, but not gently. The kind of set down that's really a release, a drop of 6 inches, not enough to hurt, but enough to make a point. Benji stumbled slightly and caught himself and came straight to me without looking back. I put my hand on his shoulder. "There," Cole said, spreading his arms wide. "Happy. God." "Thank you," I said. "You're uptight, you know that." He was talking louder now, the way drunk people do when they've decided they're the most interesting person in a conversation. You come to these things and you stand in the corner and you look at everybody like we're not good enough for you. And I'm sick of it. We're family. Act like it. "I'm acting exactly like it," I said. "Yeah?" "Because from where I am standing, you're a government secretary who thinks she's better than everyone because she has a security clearance or whatever." A few people had turned to look. I felt the weight of it. All those eyes, some waiting for me to back down, some waiting to see what happened next. "Cole," my brother-in-law said from somewhere to my left. "Come on, man." "No, seriously." Cole took a step toward me. "What is it you actually do? Like, actually?" Because every time someone asks, you give this vague non-answer, and I think it's because you're embarrassed. Which, fair. I didn't say anything, which he took as an invitation. He was a Marine, and he was 24, and he had 6 inches and about 70 pounds on me, and he had been drinking for most of the afternoon, and he had 2 friends watching. Every one of those things made him feel like the outcome of the next 30 seconds was already decided. He put his hand on my arm. Not gently. "I'm talking to you," he said. What happened next took less time than it takes to read about it. I've been asked to describe it in slow motion, and I understand why, but the truth is, it wasn't slow. It was the opposite of slow. It was the compressive silence after a very loud sound, the moment where your brain catches up to what your body already did. He grabbed my arm. I turned into it instead of away from it, which is the last thing someone expects. My right hand came up and trapped his wrist before he could register the motion, and then I stepped through, and his center of gravity shifted. And there is a specific point in a joint lock where the other person's body makes a choice for them. You can fight through the angle, or you can go down, and if you go down, you land easier. and Cole hadn't been trained for that choice, so his body made the wrong one. He went down hard on the lawn. I held the position for exactly 2 seconds, long enough for him to feel it, long enough for his brain to process what had happened and for his body to stop trying to get up. Then I let go. He stayed on the grass for a moment, looking up at the sky with an expression I'd only seen a few times in my life, the expression of someone whose internal map of the world has just been redrawn without their consent. The yard was completely silent. I looked at my nephew. He was staring at me wide-eyed. "Go find Grandma," I said. "Tell her I said she should have the last piece of cornbread before Uncle Derek eats it." Benji blinked. Then he turned and ran. The silence lasted about 4 seconds. Then my mother's voice cut through it. "Wren." Her voice was low and sharp, the voice she used when she was mortified. "What did you just—" "He grabbed me," I said. He had his hand on my arm and wouldn't let go. I removed it. He's family." I looked at her for a moment. I don't know exactly what was on my face. Whatever it was, she stopped talking. Cole's friends had moved to help him up. He was standing now, and the expression on his face had cycled through about 6 things in the past 30 seconds and had landed somewhere between humiliated and furious, which is a combination that makes people unpredictable. "You're going to apologize," he said. "No," I said. "I'm not." "What?" "You grabbed me. You were rough with a child. I'm not apologizing for any part of how I responded to either of those things. Cole." My brother-in-law stepped between us, which I appreciated. Not because I needed it, but because it was the right thing for him to do, and I noted it. My sister was at my elbow. Can you please just say sorry and we can all move on? I'm not apologizing to someone who put his hands on me and on your son," I said. "And if you want to have a conversation about why your 8-year-old didn't feel like he could tell a grown man to stop, that conversation is one I'm willing to have. But not here." Her face did something complicated. Cole was talking again. Something about how I'd assaulted him, how he had witnesses, how he was going to— "You can report it," I said, turning to look at him directly. "That is your right. If you'd like to file a police report, I'll stay and talk to them. I'll explain exactly what happened. I'll note that the incident was in front of approximately 25 witnesses, that you had been drinking for several hours, and that you had your hand on my arm. I'll also mention what you were doing with Benji before that." He went quiet. "Or," I said, "you can get some water, eat something, and we can all go home tonight and not have this become something it doesn't need to be." He stared at me. "Your call," I said. "I found my grandmother where I'd left her, in the shade by the back fence. She'd clearly watched most of it. She had the expression of someone who had seen a great many things in 81 years and found they were generally consistent with her predictions." I sat down next to her. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm okay," she nodded slowly. "Your grandfather would have liked to see that." "He would have wanted to know the mechanics," I said. "He always wanted the mechanics," she laughed. "A real one. He would have taken notes." We sat in the quiet for a while. Around us, the party was resuming, the way parties do, because people need normalcy more than they need resolution. Someone turned the music back up. The kids went back to the sprinkler. My brother-in-law and Cole were in a low conversation near the garage that I wasn't trying to hear. "He doesn't know what you do," my grandmother said. It wasn't a question. "Nobody here does," I said. "Is that by choice?" I thought about it. Mostly. Some of it is just what I do doesn't fit in a sentence. And I've learned that if people don't have a box to put something in, they just pick the closest box they can find. His closest box was secretary. And what is the right box? I looked at the yard, at the kids, and the cooler, and the half-eaten food on paper plates, at my mother standing with her back to me on the other side of the patio. "I protect people," I said. "That's the short version." My grandmother was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's always been the long version too, baby." I was getting ready to leave, keys in my hand, said my goodbyes to the people I actually wanted to say goodbye to, when my sister caught me at the gate. Her eyes were doing that thing where she was deciding which version of herself was going to speak. After a moment, the real one won. "Were you actually okay?" she asked. "Like, are you okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I am. She stopped, pressed her lips together. "I know he's a lot. I know what he was doing with Benji wasn't okay. Jess, I said it gently. He's not a lot. He's 24 and drunk, and he thinks the world owes him a specific kind of respect that he hasn't earned yet. That's not a lot. That's just a guy who needs time. He said you embarrassed him. I know. He's talking about calling the police. He won't, I said. But if he does, call me. I'll deal with it. She looked at me for a long moment. What do you actually do, Wren? I know you say federal contractor, but I smiled at her. I protect people, I said. That's the honest version. She stood there at the gate while I walked to my car. I didn't look back, but I heard her behind me, quiet, working through something she'd probably come back to on another day. I got in, started the engine, and sat for a moment in the parking space at the end of her street. My phone buzzed. A work message. Not an emergency, just a flag on a briefing document I needed to review before Monday. I set it face down on the passenger seat and let myself sit in the quiet for a minute. I thought about Benji's face when he'd looked up at me, the relief in it, the way he'd run without hesitating. I thought about Cole on the grass, looking at the sky. I thought about my grandmother's voice. That's always been the long version too, baby. I've spent a long time letting people build whatever version of me was easiest for them to carry. The quiet one, the boring one, the one with the unremarkable job who comes to holidays and stands in corners. I didn't correct them because the work asks me not to, and because some part of me had started to believe that the version of me they saw was more manageable than the version of me they'd have to deal with if they knew the truth. But sitting in that car, at the end of my sister's street, I thought about what it had felt like to move without thinking, to cross the yard, to use everything I'd spent 3 years building into my muscle and my instinct, to stand exactly where I needed to stand. I had not felt like the quiet one. I had felt like exactly who I was. I put the car in drive and headed north, back to Virginia, back to my apartment and my briefing documents and my actual life. The one that doesn't fit in a sentence but has never once needed to. The sun was setting ahead of me, pink and gold over the mountains, the way it only gets in summer, the kind of sky that makes you feel like the world is trying to tell you something you already know. I turned the radio on. Drove. I thought about that afternoon more times than I expected to. Not the part where Cole went down. That part I barely remember, honestly. Because it wasn't a decision, it was just physics. What I keep coming back to is the silence after. That specific kind of silence where 30 people are all recalibrating at once, trying to fit what they just saw into something they already know how to understand. Most of them couldn't. And I used to think that was my problem to solve. That if I explained myself better, gave people more to work with, let them in a little further, they'd eventually land somewhere close to accurate. I spent a long time trying to be legible to people who weren't really looking. That's the thing about being underestimated. After a while, you start to wonder if they're right. Not because the evidence supports it, but because when enough people tell you the same story about who you are, some part of you starts to treat it like testimony. What Cole did that afternoon, the grabbing, the dismissal, the performance of it in front of his friends, none of that was really about me. I know that now in a way I didn't fully know it then. It was about the story he needed to be true, the one where he was the capable one, the trained one, the one whose service meant something that a woman with a vague job title couldn't touch. I was a prop in that story. The easy win that confirmed what he already believed. The thing is, every action carries its own weight forward. He chose to grab me. That choice had a consequence. Not because the universe was keeping score, but because actions are real, and real things have outcomes, and no amount of confidence changes the physics of a situation you walked into without accurate information. That's what I want people to take from this, not the takedown. The information gap. Cole didn't know what he was dealing with. And he didn't know because he never asked. Not really. He asked what I did the way you ask someone at a party, waiting for your turn to talk, already deciding the answer before you hear it. The version of me he built in his head was comfortable for him. Easy. So he kept it. And when the real version showed up, it surprised him. We do this to people constantly. We meet someone, we find one detail that fits a shape we already recognize, and we stop looking. We stop updating. We carry around these fixed ideas of what people are capable of, what they've earned, what they deserve, and then we act on those ideas as if they're facts. Sometimes the consequences are small. Sometimes you end up on someone's lawn on the 4th of July, looking up at the sky. Benji ran when I told him to, without hesitating. Because even at 8 years old, some part of him registered that there was someone in that yard who actually saw what was happening and wasn't going to wait for permission to respond. That's the other side of this. It's not just about standing up for yourself. It's about being someone that a kid in trouble can run toward. My grandmother said I'd always been the long version of what I said I was. I think what she meant is that who we are doesn't start on the day we decide to show it. It builds, quietly, consistently, in the choices nobody sees and the work nobody claps for, and the mornings you get up and do the thing anyway, because you decided a long time ago that you were going to be someone worth being. Cole got up off the grass. Eventually, he'll probably tell this story differently than it happened. That's fine, he can have that version. I have the real one.